It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. Today, my guest is Olivia Heffernan. Olivia grew up in Burlingame with the expectation that success meant following a straight path from high school to college and then entering the workforce to earn money. However, starting in her freshman year of high school, Olivia's life took a turn off the straight arrow path and led her to find her own way. She redefined what success meant to her as her life goals evolved. Through her journey of self-discovery and determination, she found her passion in helping others, leading her to a fulfilling career at a mental health nonprofit, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. There, Olivia is able to find success in helping others and creating programs that meet the needs of individuals who are struggling. So let's get to the interview now with Olivia on today's edition of Success is Subjective. All right, Olivia, I'm really excited to have you as a guest on this podcast as I stumble already right out of the gate. I'm excited because we don't know each other, but I've heard some pretty awesome things about the work that you're doing by way of a former client of mine. And so I'm actually just really excited to meet your acquaintance, learn about what it is that you're doing, but also selfishly kind of learning that through your own personal journey of how you got to where you are. So thanks again for having a conversation with a complete stranger.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing here. I'm excited to talk to you more about all of this.
All right, I love it. So let's just jump in. Why don't you tell our listeners, and obviously I'm curious because I don't know any of the story, where did you grow up and what was kind of the messaging that you were hearing in terms of where you were raised about what you were supposed to be doing after high school?
Yeah, so I grew up in Burlingame, California, in the heart of the Bay Area. And I would definitely say, well, number one, there's a lot of money here and there's a lot of academic pressure to achieve such money. And the conversation for after high school, there really wasn't one. It was just college. And I think what is most apparent about it is people say, where are you going to college? They don't say, are you going to college? And it was just kind of expected that, you graduate and you go to college and then you get a good job and you're supposed to know what you want to do and find that. So that's generally what I was told is just, you go to college and that's it.
And was that your path? Now I'm so curious, being raised in that environment, were you like following the herd, like everybody's kind of telling you, or did you kind of go off script?
I 100% went off script. I threw out the script freshman year of high school. I
said, screw this. I'm not following this like high pressure, fast. I mean, just like, I always picture it, especially the Bay Area, as everybody being on this like freight train, like just destined to fall off the tracks or crash or whatever, because it's just going so stinking fast. Nobody actually has the opportunity to stop and figure out what's going on even.
That's a good way of putting it. Or even stop to think and ask yourself the question of, is this what I want? Like I used to always imagine it growing up of like people are on this straight arrow path. And then my path's all like this crooked arrow that goes up and down and sideways and forward and backwards. And then everyone else I would just see like on this straight path. And I'm like, that's not me.
Well, and that makes you the perfect guest then for this podcast. We want to hear all about those twists and turns and non-linear paths. So you said, going back to your story, freshman year in high school, you threw out the script. What was going on for you in high school? And then again, tell us kind of what your post high school years were like.
Yeah. So, well, how do I shorten this? I would say high school, starting probably in 8th grade or 7th grade, I started having a lot of mental health struggles. And it only got worse once I got into high school. So starting in freshman year, I was in the peak of depression and anxiety. And I actually had an eating disorder as well. And school was just not my place. So I actually ended up going to 6 different high schools. Most people get the pleasure of going to 1. I got the pleasure of going to 6. And I was just trying to find my way. So, I mean, even freshman year alone, I went to 3 different schools. So that immediately like sets me apart. And I just was I honestly hated school so much that I would just start ditching a bunch of classes, and then they would be like, oh, this isn't working. Why don't you try this other school? And then the same thing would happen. So I did graduate though, luckily, and I went to a special ed school, which is where I was able to succeed because they would sometimes my schoolwork was doing puzzles, and so it was more accommodating to my needs. And so then when I graduated, I was like, there is not a single chance I can go to more school. Like, this was already challenging enough. And so I instead tried to, I was still struggling a bit, so it was kind of about working through that. And then it was about, how can I start to find my purpose? Like, how can I start to build my life in a way that, I have to pave myself. So I went traveling. Like, I traveled in Nepal for 3 months. I went and taught English in Bali for 3 weeks. And I just kind of went around that way. And then I found that once I started recovering from my mental health struggles, my path came a lot more naturally. And from there, I just followed the next passion. And so then I wanted to be a yoga and meditation teacher. So I did that. And then I wanted to work with kids with autism. And so then I did that. And now I found myself in the mental health field at a nonprofit. And that's where I have enjoyed being. And, so many people go their whole lives stressing about the next step. And now I'm just kind of like, it's gonna play out how it's gonna play out, and that is okay. I don't need to know what I'm gonna be doing in 5 years.
And that sounds like I imagine for somebody in early adolescence who's struggling with depression, anxiety, and eating disorder behaviors, that there is to be almost this, like, in a place of, I don't want to say cavalier. That's not what I'm thinking, but there's just like an air of acceptance right now as you talk about like where you are, what is to come. It's almost like you are totally at this place of, we'll figure it out, right? Like, I'm not stressing over kind of when this job needs to end and the next one begins, or what's kind of coming around the bend for you. It really is just this place of sheer acceptance.
Exactly. And I actually did end up starting to take classes at a community college, because it eventually came of like, wait, now I actually am curious about learning. And that was different than, this is just the next thing I'm supposed to do. And I like found this new joy in actually learning things. So that, when people go to college, oftentimes they don't actually care. They're just trying to get it done. Or to be in a place now where I do care and want to get it done. It's just a different way to go about college.
Well, and like you said too, like you took a break after high school, right? You got your diploma, and then you needed to kind of pursue the path that you went on, right? Lots of international travel, finding your purpose. And then that break in education, I talk about this often, not so much on the podcast, but I realize, and maybe I should more, but about the loss of joy around being curious in education. I think there's just, because we have this, like, you go from high school straight to college, people don't understand that education or academics can actually be exciting, because like you just described, you're just checking boxes, right? You're taking these classes because that's what you got to take, and you're quickly trying to get through school. But a lot of those folks are missing out the opportunity of just finding joy in being a student.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even just if you see how many like college students try to cheat or like work the system or find the loopholes, like, it just proves that, at a certain point, when you've been in school at that point for, what is it, like, by the time you graduate college, is that 16 years? Like, by that point, you're burnt out. Like, you're not making the conscious choice to continue to keep learning. You're just on this path where when you make the conscious choice to continue learning, there's like a different level of commitment that goes into it.
Totally. Well, I want to hear a little bit more about what it is that you're doing, right? Like where you've landed in this space right now, and kind of dig into that work, obviously, which then paints the picture of like, what is your purpose, Olivia? Like, what are you doing? What is like, kind of filling your cup up? But what I wanted to ask before we jump too far ahead is for anybody that's listening, either a parent of a young person that maybe has some mental health struggles in high school, but maybe is kind of exploring this idea of like a gap experience, right? International trips, kind of really trying to figure themselves out. For a parent or the young adult themselves, can you just share a little bit of insight as to how those international trips were as a young woman who has those mental health struggles that you said, hey, I'm still working through this while I was abroad, if you feel comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, so the longer trip I did, the 3 months in Nepal, it was actually technically a gap year program that people were doing. So specifically for people my age, and you had these guides and they would lead you around the country. And it was a really cool experience. And I just call it the gap year that never ended. Well, I guess it technically did end now. But so I would say at that point, I was in a more okay spot with my mental health. And all those trips I did, they got me out of this home environment that at this point I'd been in my entire life, like 18, 19 years. And it got me out of this place where also I felt confined by this bubble and those standards, the standards that we talked about of the college and the money and this straight arrow path, where once I was able to step out of that, I could step more into myself and what really matters to me. And I could have the space to explore more of who I am. And kind of contradictory to that, my Nepal experience, the way I most describe it is I learned exactly who I don't want to be. And it was kind of like I went through this experience kind of with what I knew at the time and what I grew up with. And looking back at it, I was, since now coming into who I am now, that was not at all who I was. And I was able to kind of live out these values that I thought I had and then see them play out in front of me with this new group of people for 3 months, and then realize those values are not, maybe need to be changed. And my behaviors maybe need to be changed because I was able to see it played out in this new environment. So even though I learned exactly who I don't want to become, like it helped me learn more of who I am. So no matter what, I feel like traveling or doing something that you feel inclined to at that time is so important. And, worst comes to worst, if it doesn't work out, you get on a plane and you fly home. Like that's as simple as it becomes. So to me, there's really no harm in trying.
I love that. It's like an exit strategy, right? Like, hey, try this. If you're just at a place and it's just not working, then you can always circle back, and, home base can be kind of that touch point of returning to kind of hit the reset and figure out what's next, because maybe that wasn't it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Give yourself permission to exit if you need to. That was the better summary on my part. This is the end of the day where I'm like starting to slide.
No, I like that. Give yourself the permission to exit. Yes, because then it's like, it almost takes out some of the risk, because, the classic saying, you only regret the chances you don't take, where you can take the chance and still have an exit strategy, but at least you're taking the chance and trying.
Totally. Okay, so speaking of taking chances, you are working, and tell us all the things. Like, what is your job title? Where are you working? And what are some of the things that you do with your job?
Mm-hmm. So I work at a nonprofit for mental health. It's called NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And it's a nationwide organization that has all these smaller affiliates. So my affiliate's for San Mateo County. It's in the Bay Area. And my specific title is Events, Communications, and Youth Services Manager. So I run these events, and it's like our biggest fundraiser is this event called NAMI Walks. And like last year we raised like $250,000. And I run that event. We have a gala that we just started, and then I handle our communications. And one of my bigger passions is youth services. So like I lead a teen support group and And something that I actually just started is a 20s social meetup for people in their 20s who want to make friends, which is another one of my passions. So something that I learned about the nonprofit world, specifically my organization, is that since we're so small, there's so much flexibility. Like I can come in and say, hey, I want to start this. And my boss goes, go ahead. That sounds great. And it's just this like place where I can be creative in a way and, come up with an idea of I want to do this teen support group. And they're like, sure, go for it. And that has been a really unique and special experience, just being able to listen to my passions and see where they lead me as well, which has been great.
Well, and as somebody that works with young adults, I can imagine that the 20s, like mingling kind of networking opportunity is probably a highly like well received, right? At least I'm thinking for like most of my clients, I think finding your community, making friends is really hard, especially if you have any type of mental health history or you've been through a treatment continuum and now you're either returning home or you're moving to a new place. Maybe it's a college community and you're returning back to school, but you're still like, how do I find my people? I imagine that you've already got like the need for that is there.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's like once you're out of school, how are you supposed to make friends? You're not constantly meeting people your age. Your job could be people not your age as well. So I actually met a lot of friends through meetups. So then to like come full circle and be able to hold that space for other people as well has been a really rewarding experience. And yes, very well received because everyone is just wanting to build a community and make friends and do fun things.
I love it. And we'll make sure in the show notes that we have not just your contact information and the like website link for your particular NAMI chapter, but also making sure that folks that might be interested could actually just go right to the information for those 20 somethings that are looking to meet up. I think that's, again, I will just be a broken record in saying that I almost consistently have every single one of the clients that I work with asking for that. How do I find my people? And so my hat is off to you in doing that work because that sounds awesome. And it also just sounds like it's pretty exciting to show up for a job where you're given the autonomy to be able to offer something or create something. If you see the need, you're supported by the management saying, go do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for saying that and for sharing that information because it is so important and just be able to have that space, be able to create that space for people is an amazing experience. And also what I sometimes joke with them about is I was like, this is also very self-serving. I was like, I want friends as well. So this is for you, but it's also for me as well. I'm definitely benefiting from it.
I love it. Okay, so having all of this information on kind of your personal journey through adolescence and in young adulthood through the work that you're doing, up to the work that you're doing right now, I'm just going to ask you this question because I ask pretty much all of my guests. Do you see yourself as successful?
Yes, I definitely would see myself as successful. And the way I see it too is, success can look so different at any point in your life where at one point for me, success was getting out of bed. And at another point, it was going and trying to call a friend. And it just progressively, success is subjective, as you say. And it's subjective for the person at each point in their life and maybe even each day of what is success mean. And I feel like now, like I'm at a place in my life that like a few years ago, I never thought I could even hold down a full-time job. So even just that simple fact of holding down a full-time job, despite like not including all the community I've made and the life I've built for myself, like even that alone is a success, I would say.
Okay. So if you could give some advice specifically for the young person that might be in similar shoes to you as a 15-year-old, 3 different high schools, freshman year, looking ahead, I mean, realistically, for someone that's kind of going through that much transition, like what you just talked about, nobody's really thinking about the future. You're thinking about today. if you can just get through today. Maybe you're thinking about this week, but that's probably as far out as you could possibly go because there's just so much happening internally and like externally, but in your environment. If you could give advice for a young person that is kind of having those similar experiences, other than what you've already shared during this interview, is there any other type of advice that you would impart for that young person now?
Good question. I would say advice. I would say that one of my favorite quotes is that it will all work out in the end. If it hasn't worked out yet, it just means it isn't the end. And as hard as it is in that moment, trusting that if you just keep taking that one next step that feels good to you, then it will eventually take you to where you're meant to be. And two other things on that is, this is something I very recently thought of that I think has some backed evidence on my life, but is that there's very few bad decisions. If you're debating between, do I go to this school, or this school? No matter what, each of those decisions is going to take you on a life path that will take you somewhere that you're meant to go. And as hard as it is in the moment to decide what you want to do with your life, just remembering that each decision can lead you on such a unique journey, and neither good nor bad, but as humans, we will learn to make the best of it and come out of it better because of it. So even if it feels bad in the moment, decision that you make, it's every single mistake that you made or thing that you do that doesn't feel good. It just helps you learn how to make a better decision in the future and helps you learn what you want more in the future and who you want to be. And that when you are making a decision in the moment of what you want to do, be confident in it, number one. And then, just number two, remember that there really aren't any bad decisions. And if you just trust in it, it will take you where you're supposed to go.
Well, thank you, Olivia, for sharing your personal journey leading to where you are today and for sharing some pretty profound advice, like dropping this right at the end. Way to wrap up. I know that there are some young people or parents of young people that are listening to this podcast that will really appreciate hearing your story and then also hearing the suggestions and guidance that you have imparted. And so thank you again, too, for also the work that you're doing with NAMI and San Mateo, because it's needed. I direct people towards NAMI all the time. Find your local chapter, get connected. And Olivia, thank you again for being a guest on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for spreading the word about how success is so subjective, because it's a very important message. So I appreciate you having me on and the work that you do as well.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.